It's July 17th, 2017. 7/17/17. It's got a ring to it, I guess. Welcome to Let's Talk Native on the LTN Radio Network. This program breaks all the rules for Native radio. No buffalo speeches, no mystic healing, no special Indian prayers. We tackle the real issues facing Native people with a tough look at where we are, with a look back at our glorious and our grave history, a tough look at where we're at now, and look forward to our ongoing battles for sovereignty and autonomy. And that's true for tonight, that's for sure. Let's Talk Native is produced in association with Iroquois Promotions on the LTN Radio Network, streaming live from the Cattaraugus Territory and live simulcast on the Gwe, CKWE in Tandanega. Find us at www.ltnradionet.com. And of course, we are streaming live, Facebook Live on Facebook. I guess it would be obvious that we're on Facebook if it's Facebook Live. Here, Matt. I got a call comes over here. All right, we've got an interesting show. First of all, let me introduce who we've got here. I'm John Kane. I'm the show's host and producer. I've got Ed Schindler in studio joining us for commentary. I've got Matt Hill on the board, and he's going to help us with the sound and help us with the phone lines. We do have a guest that's going to be joining us. We got Tim Barnhart, who's going to join us from Tandanega, from his company, Legacy 420. And we're going to talk about cannabis. We're going to talk about the cannabis dispensaries in Tandanega. We're going to talk about the business in general. We're going to address some of the pros and the cons. What people say in opposition to this, what people say in support of it. And again, there's a fair amount of dialogue that goes in different directions here on what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. I have my own. I have my own issues with substance abuse. Not mine, but I hold my own thoughts about substance abuse, I should say, and the role that this can play. Again, pros and cons. So we're going to talk about a bunch of that. Hey, I also want to mention that I've got Jake Proud in studio. He is manning our cameras, both for our Mevo camera for Facebook Live and our camera for LTN TV, Let's Talk Native TV, our YouTube channel. Again, I encourage people to, if you're on this group page, then you should subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're listening somehow and you're not on our group page, man, you're missing out on all of it, because it's on the group page that we produce a lot of dialogue that go in between the shows. There's a lot of things that gets posted from us, from our listeners, and of course we try to keep the conversation going between shows. So that's the reason to be a part of the group page. And of course, with the YouTube channel, we are producing, doing a little bit of post-production, cleaning up some of the audio, because sometimes we have things happen during the studio during the live broadcast that we can clean it up a little bit for our YouTube videos. And we will be doing some other videos. I know I keep saying that, I keep promising it, but summer gets busy, and so sometimes it gets tough to stay on top of all this stuff. But we will be doing some other YouTube videos, some shorter videos. I got one planned. I wanted to do one, Ed. I want to do one where I look into the camera and I say, Andrew, we've got to talk. Yes. And do a one-on-one. Of course, it's going to be one-on-none, because I don't expect the camera to talk back. But I'm going to kind of ask, just kind of explain the facts of life to Andrew Cuomo and the things that he better take into consideration, especially if he's got political aspirations. But that's among some of the things I plan to do going forward. Got a lot of stuff in the hopper. We got a lot of things that we plan to do with this show, with the YouTube channel, and in general, and of course utilizing social media, Twitter, Facebook, and all of that stuff. So, but yeah, so today here is the deal. In Tandanega, which is Mohawk territory, essentially across the lake from here, across Lake Ontario, the Bay of Quinte, they call it. It is a territory that I've visited. I think Matt, have you ever been up to Tandanega?
No, I have not.
Okay. I know Matt's been up there, and we in that community, and they've taken a stand on almost every one of the issues that we have. And I've posted pictures on my blog of even young guys standing up with warrior/unity flags, and these guys have really towed the line on a lot of these issues relating to oil pipelines, standing up against the Indian Act and jurisdiction, tobacco issues, all of that stuff. And now they are taking on another challenge, and that challenge being the cannabis issue. There are dispensaries that are open today, I assume today, in Tyendinaga, and one of the major ones, which opened up right at the beginning of this month, is Legacy 420. And we do have on the line, we've got Tim Barnhart on the line. So I'm going to get right into it. I want to introduce Tim Barnhart, the owner, operator of Legacy 420. Tim, I want to thank you for joining us here on the show.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, there's going to be a little bit of a delay, so and that's kind of it's the nature of the beast. So if we jump into each other a little bit, don't worry about it. We'll get through this thing. But all right, first off, let me just start. Why don't you give an explanation first on what your establishment is and what it does, and then we'll jump off there to getting into what's going on in Tyendinaga in general. Where sources of conflict are. And a whole number of things. I know I gave you a list of questions, but we're going to bounce all over the place and kind of ad lib as we go too.
That's all right.
All right, so go ahead. Give an explanation of what Legacy 420 is.
Well, Legacy is a medical cannabis dispensary, primarily set up through white law. That is the only way we could have done it at the time we set this up. It'll be 3 years in December. So it was set up under various court challenges, constitutional challenges, Supreme Court challenges, and to our advantage, they still stand, obviously. So it's quite legal in Canada to operate a medical dispensary as long as you go through jump the hoops that they want you to jump. Now, one of them being they ask for cards. Medical exemption card, and with that card, you're allowed to purchase products. Now, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who can't get those cards because it was deemed unconstitutional, and it was never changed. So, at the current, you're only legally allowed to purchase from what is called a licensed producer that the government has. They have over 40 of them throughout Canada now. And that is the only place you're legally be able to get it. Unfortunately, with the court cases, they've opened that wide up, and it's a big gray area, and that's the area Legacy stepped into 3 years ago, and we've grown our business to be a $20 million business a year. So in a matter of 3 years, and we put like 30 people to work directly and another 70 indirectly.
Now, how long has the business been operational? You say, have you been operational for 3 years?
It'll be 3. Yes, we've been dispensing for over 2.5 years now. It's been open almost 3 years.
So your new facility is the one you just opened up at the beginning of the month. That's just a brand new facility?
It is.
Okay.
It is. Well, the premise behind the new store was health, security, and safety, right? Those were the only premise that the government can shut you down, is to say your product isn't tested. We now have a testing facility right on site, and we are testing. So that point is mute. Security is handled with a state-of-the-art camera system and alarm system, as well as a 10-foot high barbed wire fence. So we have all areas covered. So
I guess this is where some of the stuff obviously gets a little complicated. Obviously, you're suggesting that Canada does have laws that make medical marijuana legal. However, there are areas that are so undefined that gray area can fade to black, as quickly as not. So when you're operating a facility like yours and you have this challenge, essentially. Whether Canada or the province, or in the case of tribal police, you are challenged at any one of those levels. You can brandish certain legal cases and that kind of stuff, but there's still going to be some area that the Canadian government, or frankly, probably no government, has completed a list of regulatory compliances. So is that kind of where the gray area gets created?
that's not necessarily true. There are regulations in place for dispensaries, especially medical dispensaries. In Vancouver, for instance, they've had the dispensaries open since 1996. And there are regulations in existence now. There is an organization that looks after dispensaries all across Canada, and I think there's probably 400 across the country now.
But I mean, just humor me for a second here. I agree that there's regulations in place, but are the regulations complete? And I think that's the question. And you mentioned the cards, for instance. So if you are opening a facility that's following the Canadian regulations to the best of your ability, but knowing that there's some gaping holes in those things, so you have to make some judgment calls. I mean, my question is, okay, how do you determine whether somebody comes into your store is legitimately seeking cannabis as a medicine, and who makes the determination? At some point, when a sale is commenced, is it your facility that's making that judgment call?
It absolutely is. So how it works is primarily, first of all, I should say that primarily our target market is people over 50. So anybody who comes in and looks anywhere near under 25, we ask, we card, we drill down on medical conditions, we ask for backup evidence. And if they don't have it, we can't do it. But in Canada, you have a constitutional right to access cannabis for your medical purpose. There was no mention in the court system about having cards. I mean, that was legislated after the fact. But the point remains that you have a constitutional right, and no one has ever died from this medicine, so I don't understand what the fuss is myself. All it's ever done is, for me and the people that I serve, is help in their life. So, Well, but okay. So, again, you essentially have, and I don't know if this is called for in somebody's regulations, but so 25 is the age by which you give additional scrutiny. Do you have? Absolutely.
And so what you're saying is that your target market may be over 50, but frankly, you don't necessarily control who the people is that walk through your door. You can control who you sell to. So do you have any kind of track record as far as who gets denied a sale? Not a track record, but certainly probably 20% of the people that come to our store are refused. Yeah. Really? Okay. But there are many other dispensaries. Yeah, there are many other dispensaries on Tyendinaga which they could, the services they can use. We just choose not to serve that market. Okay, so and then we made that choice. And I guess that's the question, because when you're talking about a dispensary and you're marketing it as a medical dispensary, clearly there are some people that are going to utilize the looseness of that definition of medical dispensary to buy it recreationally. And I know, looking at pictures of some of your facilities, they don't look a whole lot different. And frankly, even the name of your facility. I mean, I'm not trying to pick on it, but 420 has become the slogan for kind of the catchphrase for cannabis. And when I see a name like Legacy 420, that's not unlike what are termed as head shops here on the state side. So, and I see that you've got various. You have paraphernalia that is used for smoking cannabis. So there's much about your store that doesn't look a whole lot different than a head shop here on the state side, and maybe on the Canadian side as well, for that matter. I don't know. It's about creating opportunity. When I started this, my research into this, I researched a lot of the existing dispensaries across the country, and I wanted something different. I thought that a person coming in should be able to get not only their cannabis and their medicine, but also a delivery system for that. Instead of having to go shop at 5 different stores, we carry everything in the store. So, and I'm really quite proud of what we've achieved there. I mean, we've done just recently, a couple of surveys on the grand opening,
and we had 365 surveys done, and our core demographic is exactly that age bracket. It is older people. We had between 19 and 35 was only 26 people out of 2,500 that showed up to the grand opening. So, and so I gotta tell you, most of the people that come to our store are older. So, and I'm pretty proud of that.
Well, I mean, but you don't control who actually. Like I said, you can control who you sell to. But I mean, maybe you say over 25 to come in the door. I mean, or whatever that number is.
Yeah.
But really, you don't know where the market ends up. I mean, as younger people become more comfortable. I mean, and I guess this is my question. My question is, I could walk in your facility without a medical condition, in all likelihood, kind of BS my way to purchasing some stuff from you. I would imagine. Is that probably? Is that an accurate statement?
Well, it depends on who you are. Like if you walk in, we have lots of people that come into our store who don't have medical documentation, but they're also 75 years old. And I think after 75 years old, or even 50 years old, because I've got a lot wrong with me. I'm 57, and you know what? My body is broken down, and I've got some diseases, and you know what? I don't see where this is hurting anybody. As long as you are old enough to purchase this, I mean, no one has ever died from that.
And I get all that, but I mean, I guess where I'm trying to go here is that there, the strict definition of medical is pretty broad, and I'm not saying that to criticize your facility, and I understand that there's no. Well, let me finish here. I understand that there's, there isn't any real documentation about the damages of cannabis. So, although I would argue that this inhaling smoke in general is probably not a healthy thing for you, but I get that, and I want to talk about what I think some of the benefits are as we go forward. But right now, I guess my point is that it is not a heavy lift for somebody to go in there and make a case for wanting to self-medicate with your product.
Yes, and absolutely, they have the constitutional right to do that.
Well, and then
that's the thing here. Go ahead.
No, I get that. To say that, but again, having said that, apparently that constitutional right it has age restrictions. So it's kind of where the whole thing gets. Yeah. You can chase your tail on it a little bit here. If the same argument you can make that everybody has a constitutional right is you can make the same argument. Well, then why doesn't a 30-year-old or a 28-year-old or a 25 or a 21-year-old have that constitutional right?
They actually do. But we do this because the police forces don't like it. The governments don't like what we're doing.
Well, let's talk about that. At this point, where do you stand with outside law enforcement first? I mean, is there any?
I've tried to.
Is there any pressure from the outside, whether it's the provincial or Canadian federal or I don't know what other local law enforcement? Do you have any issues with any of those?
Well, there is. Yes, there is. There's no problem with the provincial government as of yet, but the feds have been breathing down the band council's throat, who's been breathing down law enforcement's throat because of the proliferation of the dispensaries. But it is only our government that seems to be against this, really.
No, but you went to the band council and you pitched your business, and from what I understand, your reception was decent. But then other people started opening up other facilities that probably didn't meet the standard that you were meeting, and that ends up I guess positioning them or posturing them to have to offer some sort of crackdown at a bigger level. So I mean, is that a fair statement?
I'd say that's a very good, fair statement for sure.
So right now, give me an idea. How many facilities? I mean, you are one facility. You have actually two facilities, from what I understand, that are open today. But how many facilities are there in Tyendinaga right now?
There is, I think, a total of 13.
13. Wow. And 13, and give me a description on the range of what those facilities might look like.
Ooh, some of them are quite nice. I'd say probably 30 or 40% of them are quite nice. They're small, but they're nice little shops. And then the rest are kind of a mix between residential and kind of like trailers.
Okay. I mean, I remember when tobacco first started, we had people selling from out of everything from tar paper shacks, actually out of trunks of cars. But from
they're Tyvek shacks.
Yeah,
now.
Tyvek. Yeah, we've upgraded Tyveks. So tar paper shacks to to purpose-built buildings. And so what you're saying is that right now that's kind of where this is at. You've got purpose-built buildings, but you've got portable trailers, modular buildings, and people who are actually converting a part of their home into a dispensary, so selling right out of their homes.
They are.
Okay.
They are.
All right. Now. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I should tell you that from the very beginning, the band council got the police force to stop at my store a few times. I'd say 3 times in the last 2.5 years, they stopped at my shop and tried to shut me down to no avail.
And when you say tried to shut you down, what does that mean? What does that mean to say they tried to shut you down?
Well, they were going to arrest me and clean out my shop. And when I told them under what premise that was, and they said, well, the criminal code. So I said the criminal code doesn't apply to medical dispensaries. There's a carve-out for them. And there's a designation for them, and you can't do that if I follow all the rules. And at that particular time, we followed all the rules. So there was this added pressure. I got a call in December of last year, and law enforcement wanted me to go down and talk to them, so I did. And when I got there, we talked briefly about my dispensing, and then they said to me that they read a statement from the Crown Prosecutor's Office, and they said that there wasn't enough to secure a conviction. So that pretty much tells you that that the legal water we're in here is very gray. And if these places can exist in Ottawa and Vancouver and Toronto, why not Ontario?
Well, and I understand the position, and in fact, I would argue, this can be argued as a case of sovereignty. Do we have the sovereign right to, are we limited even by Canadian law in our territories or U.S. law? I would argue that we are not, but certainly it does raise the issue. And then, of course, where it becomes very problematic is the current relationship between band councils and the Canadian federal government under the Indian Act. It puts a strained relationship on who is accountable to who, and especially when you talk about tribal law enforcement. So if you've got tribal law enforcement that is essentially conceding to pressures on the Canadian federal government, in spite of the fact that the provincial governments are backed off, this is the problem that we have in our territories in general. This whole notion of what are the limits to our sovereignty, and are we still playing this role of being subordinate to the Canadian federal government or the U.S. government on this side? I think that's one of the questions. And a business like this oftentimes forces that issue into the limelight. The question ends up being, though, is how well is everybody positioned to handle this kind of scrutiny, where, frankly, I don't think we've defended our sovereignty enough. And I say this all the time because people, this is a John Kane quote. Sovereignty is not our defense, it's what we defend. So if we say that we can do this because we're sovereign, what we've got to be more prepared to do is say, we're going to defend that sovereignty. And I think this is where it gets difficult, especially if you don't have the support of the quote unquote band council, and you have to look into your community and realize there are people, and I've heard from people in Tyendinaga and Six Nations and other places as I've posted the promo for the show where people have criticized this, and so not everybody is necessarily in support of cannabis dispensaries on our territories. Although I think you can make the argument, if you don't support it, then don't buy it. It might be that simple. But we know that it ends up raising some of these issues and the scrutiny and into that relation between us and the outside law enforcement.
It absolutely does, for sure it does, and we're feeling that right now. On Tyendinaga, our law enforcement wears badges, and they're really OPP. So there's the whole issue over sovereignty. At least at the current time, they're not buying that. They don't recognize the police, and they don't recognize the bad counsel. So you really got a situation on your hands. I met with them today and talked to them about that. This may being a flashpoint. And I wouldn't want to see that happen because they went to visit a dispensary down on Highway 49, and they were met with huge resistance. There was people from all the other dispensaries gathered around and surrounded the car, and of course they had words, but these people have their life savings into this. There's an easier way to do this. All they have to do is come talk to us. Talk about regulations, talk about standards, talk about testing. These are things that we're doing already, and all they have to do is communicate instead of the law enforcement agenda and smashing down doors and closing things up. That's just going to cut off economic development to our territory. I don't get none of this. They're saying that the bad council is pissed off because there's so much cars coming to Tyndall. I've never heard such nonsense. That's called economic development.
Yeah.
But I do not understand the government's position on this. I don't.
Well, let me ask again, going back to cars coming in, that kind of stuff. We're going to take a break here in just a minute or two. But so when you say your target market is over 50 years old, who is your target market? Not just the age group. Would you suggest that your target market is primarily the non-native population outside of your territories at this point?
It absolutely is. That is absolutely our target market. We got people coming as far from North Bay, Montreal, Toronto. We're centered right on the 401, halfway between Montreal and Toronto. So we're in a perfect spot to gain economic advantage on this. But my primary target is the licensed producers. They're going to be the people that we have to go up against in commerce. And so I'm trying to take as many customers as theirs as I can because they all have their legal target.
Who currently is your supplier? Where does your product come from?
Well,
I don't mean I don't ask you to name names here.
No, and we can. That's the good thing. We can, and that's the whole purpose about setting up a legalized program. We go through all MMAR growers. It was a program set up in 2001. When medical marijuana was first introduced into Canada. So it was a program, and the program allowed people to grow for their own medicine. Mm-hmm. But at the time, they gave them copious amounts. And so they've never been able to extinguish that deal. It's been found unconstitutional, but that part of the program still remains to this day. So we purchase ours through all those folks, the MMAR. And today,
so again, let me just so I understand. So what you're purchasing from are people who essentially are operating under the legal premise that they can grow for themselves, but they're actually selling. But they're actually selling. Does this I would imagine present some legal challenges from whether they have the legal right to sell to you or not. I guess the question whether you have the legal right to buy is the other question, I guess.
You absolutely do.
Yeah.
You absolutely do, and you still do to this day. It's gone through 2 court challenges and withstood both challenges, the Supreme Court and a constitutional challenge, and it's withstood both.
All right, hey, we're at the bottom of the hour, so let me take a break here, and when we'll come back, and I want to go a little bit farther on this subject about the challenges and about who suppliers are and who purchasers are and that kind of stuff. But we'll do that when we come back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native, and I've got Tim Barnhart from Legacy 420 joining us for the program, and we'll pick it up when we come back.
Didn't mean to call you baby. It just came out that way. Didn't mean to call you baby. Just came out that way, yeah. travel far and beyond, only to find a true love found. Didn't mean to call you baby. No, 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 no. It just came out that way, baby. Didn't mean to call you baby. Yeah, yeah. It just came out that way. Yeah. For my heart's been hurting for many years. I've known the pain, darling, with so many tears. You touch me deeply in ways you never know. You open up my heart, you open up my soul. Didn't mean to call you baby. No, 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 no. That just came out that way. Came out that way. Didn't mean to call you baby. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it just came out that way. Yeah, yeah.
I didn't mean to call you baby. That's Murray Porter. Songs Live Life Played. Good song. Hey, just in case you don't know, this the song that we opened up with was from Backwards Medicine. It's the closest thing we had.
It's the only thing we have with medicine in it.
The only thing we have with medicine in the word. All right. Hey, I've got Tim Barnhart joining me from Legacy 420 in Tandanega. We're talking about I don't want to talk it, consider it, an inundation of dispensaries in Tandanega, but clearly there's a path that looks very eerily similar to when tobacco came onto our territories, or when we brought tobacco onto and reclaimed, I will say, the tobacco trade onto our territories. And of course, there's no question that the tobacco that we sell today is not the tobacco we traded 1,000 years ago. And I don't want anybody to jump all over me saying, yeah, come on, that's not the same thing. Well, the fact of the matter is tobacco is something. It is among the commodities that Native people traded historically. The fact that we reclaimed a place, a very, very small place, I might add, in the tobacco industry, after that tobacco industry was essentially bastardized by Europeans. I think that it's just. I think it's we had a right to do it. Not everybody supported it back then, and you can go back, and I remember in every one of our territories, we had plenty of people who said, "Oh, you can't be doing that. You're exploiting our sovereignty. You're going to bring trouble to our territories." There were people who condemned every person who got in the business. And you know what? When it was a tar paper shack selling cigarettes, it had some level of scrutiny. When it jumped up to the GREs and some of these other guys who got into manufacturing in a big way, they got held to task, and they were being called all kinds of names, in spite of the fact that they were employing massive amounts of people and that kind of thing. So we're kind of back at that same place now with this. And I think there is a compelling argument to be made for for dispensing this substance, but I want to get back to it a little bit, because when we talk about this thing at this point, you are marketing this thing as medical, this product as medical marijuana. I guess the question that I have is, what are you considering? I mean, I know how strict it is in New York. New York has medical marijuana, but it's only in oil form or capsules, and they've limited, very much limited what is an acceptable ailment that can be legally treated. So, what are you considering the ailments or recommending marijuana as a medicine to either treat or help treat?
Well, that's a good question. We kind of leave that up to the consumer, right? To tell us what's wrong with them and what their ailment is. There is no, again, the Constitution, the challenge never, they never spoke about or left it up to the governments. It was the governments who decided what to pick and choose as an illness. Lacking all available studies, we have not even studied this in Canada. So I have to tell you, most of the studies that I've read, it comes from the United States, Europe, England, all around the world, actually. So it's out there. The information is available, but it works for everything. Menstrual cramps, cancers, fibromyalgia, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. So it's just a plethora of illnesses and ailments. So we generally leave it up. We've got regular customers probably who come twice a week, and they grab their medicine, and you know what? We see them twice a week. We have for years now, and you kind of get used to serving them, right? It's kind of like it's their medicine, right? When they walk in, there's a big smile on their face, and that's how we roll at Legacy 420.
All right. Hey, no, and look, I'm not trying to grill you on this, but I mean, the fact of the matter is, when I mentioned earlier on that there is that the regulations, there are regulations, but they're loose. In some place, they're almost non-existent. And like I said, if you're going to market something as a medicine, it's a little hard to and from the Canadian government standpoint, to say that there's a constitutional right to use this as a medicine without ever defining what the medicine treats. It does represent, it does bring scrutiny to it, and that's all I'll say about that. I do want to talk about some of the things, the studies that are being done, especially in other countries, about treatment. I know that seizures are one of the things that are beginning to be looked at in terms of trying to come up with clinical trials to determine its application and its efficacy with treating seizures, PTSD, some of these other issues. So I think I'm questioning. I know that there is opportunity here, and I think one of the big issues, and especially when people get into the conversation about this being a drug or a substance that can be abused, like alcohol or other drugs, and I think that's possible. So I won't say that's not true, but I guess the question that I'm hearing is that there are some studies that are being done in places like Israel and other places that are suggesting that marijuana may actually help break the addictions to some of these drugs, like the opiates and others. And certainly they are a safer alternative for people who are looking to gain a certain recreational use out of a drug. It's certainly a safer recreational use using cannabis than using any of the opiates. Not just fentanyl, but the whole. And again, nobody seems to criticize how many the level of prescriptions that doctors are giving on those addictive substances. So talk to me a little bit about what you've learned about the role that marijuana can play in trying to either substitute or break the chemical addictions tied to the opiates.
That's a good question. That's a good question. It's actually not only being studied in Israel, but in the United States too. There's 3 or 4 pretty good studies out now that conclude that it absolutely does help. It's up to 64% effective by using heavy oil, edibles, and to reduce the discomfort of coming down, right, off the opiates. So it helps them out with the sweats, with the tremors, with diarrhea, vomiting. You get very little or none of that. I broke my hip about 5 years ago, and that's how I got off it. And that's what prompted me to start this business, was the fact that all they wanted to give you was opiates. And I became addicted to opiates. And a friend of mine said, hey, I had smoked. I've always been a smoker and a commercial grower for a long, long time. And so, you know what? I thought, well, geez, that can't work. Why would smoke not work? So I started eating this oil, and lo and behold, I was able to manage my pain and manage my life a lot better and get off the opiates. So to make a long story short, I revisited my doctor after 4 years, I think it was, after I was off the opiates. Now, this is just last month I went to see him, or 2 months ago. And he said to me, can I talk to you a minute? And I said, sure you can. I said, what's up? And he's going, well, he says, you really started quite a movement. And I said, well, I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you, doctor. And he told me then, went on to tell me that I reduced his patient list by 50%. So, so he also said that most of the people who are addicted to opiates are now coming to purchase medical cannabis. So that is a huge figure. That was the doctor. I won't mention his name, but he was being very direct. And I then said, well, he said, I'm working only part-time shifts now. And he says to me, I said to him, I said, well, you can come to work for me then. And I've got a clinic right there. We'll set you up in an office, got a brand new office for you. And he said to me, you know what? He said, what do you want me to do? I said, I just want you to undo some of the damage you've done to our community and start writing cannabis scripts for people so they can get their medicine legally. And so that's what's going on in Canada. It is so hard and so difficult to get a doctor to write you a prescription that people are really just, they're just fed up. It takes years sometimes. Some people don't even get the opportunity to get pain relief from cannabis because their doctor will never sign it. So I think we're doing a hell of a search here.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the product line they have. Obviously, there's smokable. There's everything from buds to leaves to edibles to oils to capsulated stuff. Give me a kind of a laundry list of what you've got. The form that you're actually selling in.
We've got it in all forms. We do have oils. We have concentrate. We have hash. We have 60 or 70 different strains usually every day. We have all sorts of medicated candies, medicated goodies. They're really popular with the older folk. We have tinctures. We have alcohol-based tinctures. We've got syrup-based tinctures. We've got diabetic-friendly tinctures. We've even got diabetic candy. So we're trying to cover the whole market.
Do you have inhalers?
So that we're like.
Do you have inhalers?
Not yet.
And how about vape oils?
Not yet.
Yes, we do. Vape oils?
Yeah, we do.
Okay. And I guess getting back to the edibles, and the edibles can range everything from cookies and brownies to bake, all kinds of a number of baked goods. One of the questions that's got to come up, and I go back to the fight over tobacco, at least here in the United States. There was a big pushback in the United States to, and I got to single out Camel cigarettes. And they said because they were using a cartoon image, Joe Camel was his name, to market their product, they claimed that they were being targeted for kids. So when you're talking about candies with and again even snack foods, I guess, with this stuff. I mean, do you have any concern about how these things may be consumed once they leave your door?
Not at all. Not at all. We figure pretty close to 1 million people in 2.5 years. We have had no one come back with it saying they've had any adverse effects from this. We've had no one get sick. So I think that's kind of mute. I really do.
Well, and nobody's come back to you saying, look, your product's showing up in a school or anything else. Go ahead, Ed.
No.
Wait, hold on, we got another question. Go ahead.
I got a question, or at least I'm going to share with you what I've come across, because I have epilepsy, and I found that there's a difference between treatment of the symptom and curing the condition. And what I found out was that there's no cure, at least not with medication, for the condition. And so therefore they've stood there and said that they will not endorse it because it's not a cure. Okay, but yet they give me prescriptions for the symptoms.
That are still not cures.
They're not cures.
They'll prescribe other medications that are only symptom relievers, but not cures. But they stay away from cannabis for that same reason.
And that's the thing that their argument is that the thing's being advertised as a treatment or as a cure, and which is it? And that's what you got to be careful in terms of wording. It may be just treatment of a symptom, like diabetes. It may not cure the diabetes, but it may help with the treatment of any symptoms. That's one of the things I found.
I got a few points to ask about. Now, you don't do any of the growing yourself, correct?
Breaking up on me.
No, do you do any of the growing yourself? Do you produce? Are you a producer in any way?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We got a medical exemption for 500 plants. And so that's what we have in this year. So we are under the ACMPR program, which is the latest of Health Canada's medical grow program. So we are covered for 500 plants, yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to...
and we plan on building...
Keep going. Just keep going, Matt.
I guess what I'm trying to get to here is what are the other byproducts that you can get, the derivatives from other than the medical? Is there any interest in the textile or any of the other products?
Like the hemp products?
Yep. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of waste coming from the plant itself. I mean, not waste, but I mean, how is it like the stems and all that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we always separate hemp from cannabis.
I'm looking to see how big is this economic influence on the community. Is there other sides to it that are going to be utilized besides just the medical part of it?
I'm losing you.
Okay. The question is, I mean, when you're a producer and you've got and you're growing for buds and leaves, is there any other market for the rest of the plant, the stalks? I mean, we get obviously people talk about hemp and that kind of stuff. And are you developing any use for that specifically there?
We absolutely are. Yeah, so that's a good question. We actually every bit of the plant is utilized, including the roots now. So you got up to 1% CBD in the roots, and the stock is up to 1% CBD. So that's all concentrated. Absolutely, it is. Yeah, we use every bit of the plant.
So you're using every bit of the plant to extract, the CBDs, not necessarily to use the fiber for other, other physical properties.
Yes, we concentrate the oils down.
Okay.
Well, I guess I'm asking, is there other industries besides medical, for this? Is there, are you looking at T-shirts? Are you looking at, the textiles? And how is the restaurant industry doing in the area?
Really good, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, Doritos must have gone through the roof, and Twinkies, right?
Can't keep them in stock.
Yeah. We hired 2 biochemists to take care of all that. They make all the edibles, the candies, all that sort of thing. So everything's weighed, measured, exactly what it says on the package, what is in the product. So I don't leave that up to just anybody. You have to be know what you're doing, and these guys are all educated to do that. So.
I guess what I'm looking at here is the economic umbrella, I guess, or what do you want to call it? How deep into the community is this economic boom going? Is it, like I said, even people who aren't in favor of marijuana and stuff, if they open up a restaurant that sells just hamburgers and hot dogs, I mean, they're going to be doing pretty good as...
Yeah, the flow of traffic obviously
other
has
than
to
just
have
medical stuff.
The flow of traffic alone that you generate by people coming in. Is there a noticeable economic impact, not just for you personally because you own a facility, but is there a notable economic impact of the traffic that's bringing people in?
It is. At my store alone, we serve usually around 800 to 1,000 a day.
Say that you broke up a little bit. Give me that number again.
Probably up to 2,000 a day.
Okay.
Averaging, yeah. Yeah. So it's and that's just my place. Now you've got probably 3 or 4 other fellows who are pretty up on their game, and they've got a good business plan together, and I'm sure they're rolling in the numbers too of cars. So this opens up the gas and cigarettes and the whole industry, right? You've got groceries being sold, you got restaurants being filled. So yeah, we're driving large amounts of traffic trying to Nagin, and that's, you know what, we get back to sovereignty here. Our way is so much different than the Banning Council way. The Banning Council just wants to take friggin' handouts from the province and the Fed and create programs that lead you nowhere. And I don't really think that's the way forward. I think economic development, private economic development is the way forward.
It seems like a pretty good stimulus.
People don't agree with that.
It seems like a pretty good stimulus once you get that, like the flow of traffic coming into the area for their product. Now, I mean, it's up to the community to start implementing some of the other spur industries that can come off of that. Is what I'm trying to get at. You know, the like I said, the textiles. They claim that the hemp. The fibers in clothing is far superior than cotton. You know, it's a lot better at absorbing and mildew resistant and all those other factors that go into a shirt, say the longevity of it.
Well, and that's the whole idea of expanding cottage industries off of creating a level of acceptance, not just on cannabis, be it medical or recreational, but the idea of trying to expand this into the other cottage industries. So not only do you have a side benefit from a flow of traffic and that kind of thing. I mean, and I think this has got to be part of the challenge, because I mean we're closing in on the top of the hour. I want to get back to where the struggle is, because right now the last thing that I saw posted online suggested that there was that they were ramping up pressure from the tribal council police standpoint, and that there was even that there is the potential for imminent conflict. Where does this leave you? Where does it leave the community? And how do you forge a way forward? Not just the idea of mounting up enough resistance to the police, but trying to have the dialogue to make sure that that you have a thoughtful process to resolve any of the concerns they have, because it looks like things may be heating up.
Good question. About 3 months ago, 6 months ago now, we formed the NIMCA, which is the National Indigenous Medical Cannabis Association, and we've started in each province as well. So we've got British Columbia, Manitoba, Saskatchewan. We've got all the way to Quebec signed up, got charters all filled, got their letters incorporated. So NIMCA is going to create standards and regulations that hopefully will govern every First Nation across Canada. Now, this is the only way we're going to be allowed to move this forward if we take care of this ourselves. The cigarette industry was taken away from us, and I'm not going to let this industry be taken away from us. So we need to get out in front of this. We need to form regulations and standards so that people feel safe coming to these dispensaries, and they're getting a safe product that they can ingest. So we are doing something about it, and I'm going to go again. I spoke with Tyendinaga Police this morning about a different way, about a less forceful way, and maybe through negotiation and standards and regulations. So I'm going to meet with them again tomorrow and hammer away some more at them. So we'll see where this goes. Hopefully,
well, I know one of the challenges, obviously, is on one hand you are bound to be somewhat compliant to the Canadian regs. At the same time that you're saying I know, but at the same time that you're saying the Canadian regs don't apply. So it ends up being this conversation, this circular reasoning that we have to. And I know this is the challenge that we have no matter what industry we get into. So I'm not saying this is a criticism to you, but I know that becomes the difficulty. I mean, every time we talk about sovereignty, we'll have somebody say, yeah, but you drive with a New York State driver's license, or if you fight against fossil fuels, they say, yeah, but you'll drive your car to the Dakota Access Pipeline. So we end up with some of this circular reasoning that kind of to undo the conversation. I know this is a challenge, but and I'm always one of those guys who says, look, we understand Canada has standards, and we are not submitting to those standards. We are either matching or exceeding those standards, and that we are applying those. And I think the challenge for you though has to do with how you present this to the community. This isn't just about you and the police or you and the tribal council. You have a whole community of people, and what is generally the feedback that you're getting from the people that are most immediately impacted by a store like yours being there?
Well, we're getting. We've been telling customers about the impending situation. The police force is wanting to shut us down. they are just mortified. They're just getting used to the idea that they can come into a safe place to purchase their medicine as opposed to buying it off the street. So I think they're pretty irate. In terms of people in the community, I have huge support here in Tyndonega to do what I'm doing. As I said before, I went to band council who in February who basically didn't. They told me that they support medical cannabis dispensaries on Tyndonega. They didn't use plural. They said dispensary at the time, but not knowing that would snowball.
Open up the gates, yeah, sure. Well, you must have, a dozen other facilities there that are obviously supporting the fact that you seem to have opened the door for them as well. So, obviously you're getting some of that support. Look, we're running out of time, so I want to do a couple of things here. One thing I want to do is I want to promote a show on CKWE. If you're listening to this show on the on CKWE, then be sure to check out Heather Wade, Midnight in the Desert. She's on weekdays on CKWE. 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. That's kind of just a neat time slot. I've always liked that overnight slot. If I ever had the opportunity to just kind of hang out all night long.
That's good driving radio there.
But anyway, check out Heather Wade with Midnight in the Desert. She is going to address this issue ongoing. Obviously, this is it's Tyndonega. So, and we do have listeners. I mean, there are people listening at some of the highest places, in Ottawa and other places that are checking some of this up. So if you're listening to this program on CKWE, then you know how to tune it in there. But if you're listening to this through our other network or checking us out on Facebook, go to www.ckwe1039.fm. Again, CKWE 1039 FM. That's where you can go to stream the show and check out. But do this anyway. I mean, if you're a night owl, I just recommend highly you tune in Heather Wade and her Midnight in the Desert weekdays, again, from 12 a.m. to 4 a.m. Maybe you're medicating yourself and you need some entertainment. By all means, check out Heather Wade and Midnight in the Desert.
Tim, Art Bell stuff will get you going there.
Yeah, stay away from that. Check out Heather. Hey, Tim, I want to thank you for being a part of this show. We'll get you back on. We're following this thing closely down here, and we'll get you back, and we'll do an update from time to time. And I wish you well. And I know I asked you some tough questions, but I think this is. I think you handled yourself well, and I support what you're doing. And I hope the best outcome for you and the community, and in any of the conflict resolution that you guys have to look forward to in terms of those who are not so supportive, I guess.
John, thank you for the audience.
All right. Okay. Hey, I'm not going to New York this week, but I do want to say that I'm going to be on the Capitol Press Room with Susan Arbetter on Wednesday. Obviously, I took a break today from beating up on Andrew Cuomo, but I'll be back Wednesday to do it in his, in Albany, in the Capitol. So check out the Capitol Press Room. You can go online. The Capitol Press Room is a show that airs in different time slots throughout the state. You can check it out here. I think it's at 8 o'clock on WBFO here in the Buffalo listening area. But check it out online. Look up the Capitol Press Room with WCNY for local listings and times, and check out how I do in Albany on this Andrew Cuomo issue. And again, thanks again to Tim Barnhart and Legacy 420. That's it for tonight. We'll see you back here on Friday.
Yeah.